It's the Fix California Hour on the John Phillips Show. Johnny will be back on Thursday. It's Randy Wang here, and the phone number to join us is 800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and search for the John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to get to all your calls. Let's start with an email. If you'd like to email us, you could do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Kevin writes in, Fremont is such a bizarre city. Every couple of months, KTVU will run a story about Fremont being ranked as one of the top 10 most pleasant places to live in the U.S., and then 10 minutes later run a story about a shootout among rival gang members in an apartment complex in Fremont. In fact, Henry Lee could lead both reports with,
"It's happened yet again."
That is in the running for one of my favorite drops of 2025. Thank you so much for the email. Let's get back to the phones. Do you think California is truly in a housing crisis? Do we build our way out of the homeless problem? Because that's what all the politicians keep saying. Let's go to Cardi in Lancaster. Cardi, hello.
Hey, how you doing, Randy?
Doing great.
So I have a couple of points. So number one with the housing. Okay, so in my neighborhood, what they do is they buy these old houses, they scrape them, and then they put these ugly 4 or 6 apartment buildings and square. So they're ugly, and they rent them out, and nobody can buy a house there now because they've scraped it. And for the housing, part of the housing problem is greedy developers and contractors. That's the bottom line. We can build affordable housing so everybody can buy here. Number two, the homelessness. Okay, Randy, where has $23 billion gone? You know where it's gone. Corruption, correct?
Exactly.
And we can utilize all these government buildings in Los Angeles that are empty. We could have put just $1 billion in one of these high rises that are empty that we own, that taxpayers paid for. We could have rehabbed them, put a learning center, a hospital, and train these people back into being people that can help society and help themselves, right? Citizens, back to citizenship, and get off dope. It's pretty simple.
It's not complicated, but we sure do like to make it complicated. Thanks so much for the call, Cardi. Appreciate it. And one thing that he pointed out that is so irritating to me is, for some reason, according to our local electeds, the way that you build housing is by destroying existing housing and then building taller housing on top of it. Last I checked, the last time I drove through the 5 freeway to go from Southern California to Northern California, there's a lot of empty space in this state. And to his other point, yes, all government buildings, I think we should evict all the politicians from working at LA City Hall and turn that building into a giant homeless shelter, a giant homeless hospital. I think that would be great. They can all work remote. Let's go to Hollis in LA. Hollis, hello.
Hi, Randy. You are fantastic, and so is John. I just want to remind people that during Trump's first term, our beloved governor made an announcement, broadcast it over the news, and I heard it on your station, for all the homeless people to come to California because we love people and we love to take care of them, and we're so, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we have love in our hearts and we want them to come to California. Well, they did. Many of them did. They found a way through Biden when he was in his term. So just remember that when you go to the polls, people, please. Our governor, Gavin Newsom, wanted homeless people to come, and he gave them an open invitation. So that is, number one, the answer to the question, how do we have so many homeless people? They were invited in. And how do we deal with them? And that's a whole other kettle of worms that everybody has great ideas about, and I think many of them should be implemented. But they probably won't unless we go back to a conservative Republican-run state, which California was through all of its building and success and people coming here and making it the grand state it once was during the 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. So that's all I want to say. Remember, they were invited by Governor Gavin Newsom.
I think we'll never forget that one. Thank you so much for the call, Hollis. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Camille in Santa Rosa. Camille, hello.
Hi, how are you today?
Doing great.
Great. I was just looking on Amazon, and you can get this portable, beautiful little homes for $39.99. And I lived in a coastal town in Southern California where they were bragging that they had gotten the cost of a one-bedroom apartment down to $500,000 for their affordable housing. So it is definitely a developer scam, this affordable housing thing. During the Dust Bowl, when we were invaded by so many poor homeless people from Oklahoma and that area, we set up like Quonset huts on military bases, and they all stayed there, and they went to work every day, and everybody had a job until they were able to get out and get their own places. So since most of them, though, are mentally ill, we need to find a way to give them services affordably. It's going to be politically uncomfortable to just ship them all out somewhere. But with these little portable places and a little clinic in the middle where, like they did in Turlock, I really like that idea, where the doctor comes once a week and everybody gets whatever treatment they need, or you would have people treating the mentally ill. You know, we did turn them out of the state hospitals, and they're out there on the street. So we need to do something with them. So anyway, my idea is basically that they have these little pods with a little clinic in the middle, because every city has vacant land, and they can use that vacant land to set something up like Turlock did. So anyway, that's my idea, and we've got to do something. And
we definitely do.
Yeah, and you've got, if you know, this is such a liberal state that it's going to be politically impossible just to put them on buses and ship them somewhere. We're going to have to deal with the problem in a way that the liberals will accept it. And so that's my idea, is giving them medical treatment, inexpensive homes. You can order them on Amazon and leave the damn developers out of it.
Let's call HGTV and get that tiny home show. We could build a whole mess of them out in the desert where there's plenty of open space. Thanks so much for the call, Camille. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. You know what no one ever proposes? Why don't we build more trailer parks? Wouldn't that used to be the way that, people that couldn't afford to be in a certain area, well, you can go into a trailer park. And modular homes are very inexpensive, way less expensive than permanent supportive housing at $900,000. Or how about those crooked shipping containers that the dongs are trying to sell to Shangy for $300,000 a pop? Let's go to Mark in San Mateo. Mark, hello.
Hey, good afternoon. I love your show. Correct me if I'm wrong, the mental hospitals that were closed in the Reagan administration was signed into law by Pat Brown and carried over. It went into effect when Reagan was in office, but it was signed by a Democrat, Pat Brown. And another thing, you mentioned out in the middle of the desert, one of your former hosts on this station, I don't know if you want me to mention his name or not, proposed that years ago. They need to reopen the mental hospitals and, take money from illegals or wherever you want to go. I hate taxes. I'd even pay an extra tax to reopen the mental hospitals.
That's the real reform that we need. All that nonsense with Prop 1 last year of reforming the Mental Health Services Act. We need to be able to build a locked facility that can house hundreds, maybe thousands of people, because what we're doing right now is 16 beds at a time and putting them in neighborhoods, and that's not helping anybody. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Doug in Albany. Doug, hello.
Hi. Am I in the air now?
You are.
Well, listen, I appreciate your show, and I want to tell you that. But some years back, I did a paper for my advanced degree, and it was on the mentally ill homeless in California. And I was very surprised to find out that Ronald Reagan had nothing to do with drying up any of that money. What happened is in about 1961, Senator Ted Kennedy and his brother, the president, John, they initiated legislation to dry up all that money because they felt that people with mental problems, most of them could be dealt with successfully as outpatients on psychotropic drugs. And it had to do with his sister who was mentally compromised and so forth. So the problem is, and it passed, John F. Kennedy signed into law, I believe, around 61 or 62. And so it dried up the money, and it hit California about the time Ronald Reagan became governor. And I think the vehicle here was the Lanterman-Petrus Act. I'm not sure without looking at my notes, but that's why the money dried up. It was Democrats that did it. And, I've heard this lie forever. Ronald Reagan dried it up. He had nothing to do with it. You can research that and find it online. I believe JFK signed it into national law in 62 now. But that's the truth of it. And the man earlier said Pat Brown signed it. Well, I think he was before Ronald Reagan, but they may have had to make compromises before it finally took full effect. But Lanterman-Petrus was the final vehicle, and I believe, Reagan, whenever his first term was.
Well, and every reform that we've had for
fun.
LPS in the last few years has barely even moved the needle because we want to make everything voluntary, and what you need is involuntary because these people cannot make decisions for themselves.
That's right. They have no family to look out for them. They don't have the discipline to stay on drugs. So it's ridiculous to put a person with no discipline on the honor system. They can't do it. And a lot of the mentally ill homeless, by the way, they're claustrophobic. That's why you see them pushing carts and doing things all night long. They're claustrophobic. They can't be inside, so they don't need a hot meal and a bed. They can't stay inside. And then the drug burnouts, that's a whole other argument. But I know this I'm actually a retired police officer with almost 40 years of service in two different cities. So I've been on the front lines. I've seen it. I know it. I've dealt with it. And even when you lose the ability to do the temporary emergency commitments, which we've kind of lost now, you have less control over these folks than you used to. In fact, they have free lawyers that have given them a rights group, and they have a right to refuse the drugs to stabilize them when they go into the emergency hospital, if you can believe that.
Unfortunately, I can believe it.
Well, the inmates are running the asylum, and police officers, we're so disgusted. We always thought we were defending everybody, and then the defund thing came along, and people don't realize yet. You got a lot of people mid-career in those jobs that were homicide experts and SWAT experts. When they find out that the people they're serving don't care, then they start asking themselves, why should we be in a place like Oakland or some other big city when we could live in Walnut Creek and our kids could go to school there? So they've shot their foot off really good, and it'll probably be 10 years before that profession comes back again.
Oh, I mean, right now we're in the middle of just this horrific staffing crisis in every major city in the state where there are bidding wars, and it's because exactly what you said. We decided to completely demoralize one of the most essential jobs that we have in the state.
Absolutely. And just so you know, Randy, 21 years of my time was in Oakland, and I went up through the ranks there. That was in the 60s and into the 80s before I moved on. And the city was cheating then. They had a DEI program. They called it affirmative action. They were cheating on promotions, and they had two different lists for the white guys and the black guys and so on and so forth. So they ran most of their professionals out of that city on their own. So I can't even read the news about the city anymore. It's disappointing.
I feel you. Thank you so much for the call, Doug. Call us again. You're the best. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Do you think we can really build our way out of the homelessness problem? Is California truly in a housing crisis, and just building more housing is going to solve the problem? That's what you keep hearing. Let's go to James in San Jose. James, hello.
Hey, how are you today? I love your show.
Thank you. Doing great.
So I have a very strong opinion about this because I've lived in the Bay Area all my life, and I've seen different eras of people on the streets and drugs that have been out there. And, by the way, I'm a recovering addict, alcoholic. I've been sober for nearly 15 years. And so I know for a fact that you look at these people on the streets, they're a bunch of drug addicts and alcoholics that are being enabled by the state. Okay, they're given a free check free food stamps, free medical care, and they're never going to stop. They're never going to hit a rock bottom to where they want to get clean or get sober, because there's no end to it. And on top of that, 20, 25 years ago, when the laws were a lot harder, if you were arrested with a small little tenth of a gram of crystal meth or cocaine, and now today the big thing is fentanyl, you would go to jail. Today they don't do any of that. So the lack of law enforcement, the money that's given to them by the state, is what's keeping them out there. It has nothing to do with homelessness, because none of these people would be able to pay for a house, or an apartment or a room if all their money is going to dope and alcohol. It's just that simple, So, and my other thought, and I've said this to my wife, and she's like jokes around about, hey, I should, call the mayor and let him know this, but this is not rocket science. I mean, I bet you there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that have come to the state of California because there's money here, and there's free, health care, the free food stamps, the free money that I talked about. And, most of them are not even never held a job here or had a place to live here that they paid rent at. So how do you deem them homeless? I believe that the only people that should get any assistance from the state of California or any county or city are people that were born here in this state, or people that have actually held a residence or held a job here. And beyond that, I think everybody who's born in Oklahoma or Bakersfield or other states should be given a one-way ticket back to there, and that's their problem, because that's really their home.
Yeah, so California should not be the one that is paying for the entire country's homeless. And you're right, we did invite them here. We have all the generous services, and we have permissive drug law. That's why you literally hear the term drug tourism in places like San Francisco.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Well, thank you so much for the call, James.
Yes, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for the call. We'll continue. We're taking your calls this hour, 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Do you truly believe California is in a housing crisis? Do we build our way out of the homeless problem? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. If you're on hold, stay on hold. More of your calls coming up next. It's Randy Wang here on The John Phillips Show. Let's go to John in Long Beach. John, hello.
Randy, good afternoon.
Howdy.
Hearing a lot of people from the Bay Area. Well, I'm down here in Long Beach, and the gentleman that called a minute ago, said he was clean and sober 15 years. Well, I've been clean and sober 44 years. And I go to a lot of 12-step meetings near downtown Long Beach, and you see a lot of these people wandering in off the street who are abusing alcohol, who are abusing drugs. And people ask them all the time, hey, do you want some help? Do you want to go to a detox? Do you want to try a sober living? A few of them say yes, but most say no. And the city of Long Beach just spent, I believe, somewhere around $30 million to buy and renovate about a 50 or 60 unit motel in North Long Beach to give out free to people that have nowhere to go. Now, I wonder where they got that money from. It didn't really say where that came from. And the city, which I'm surprised, in some instances, I have seen them with a city trash truck, a couple of police vehicles, and a couple of outreach people cleaning up some of these homeless populations that are living on the sidewalk on city property. But there are still a lot of those around, and I've encountered a lot of those folks coming in to get a free cup of coffee or a free donut or a cookie or whatever. And most of them, unfortunately, they do not want help.
Unfortunately, you are right. We're out of time, John, but thank you so much for the call. More of your calls coming up next. It's Randy Wang on The John Phillips Show. The phone number to join us is 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. We're taking your calls right now at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Is California truly in a housing crisis? Do we just build our way out of the homeless problem? I'm not so sure. Let's go to Ernest in L.A. Ernest, hello.
Yes, I would say, to answer your question directly, no, we are in a corruption of government crisis that is fueling this homeless situation. I wanted to respond to some of your callers. I really don't have all the time to get to it, but one is that 90% of the homeless population are Black Americans. I know, I've been there. Even though we are 8% of the population, we're about 90% of the homeless population in Los Angeles. The other thing is about Reagan. Now, I am a mental health professional, and I have worked in the field, in all kinds of mental health clinics in Los Angeles. I've worked with the homeless population. It was Reagan that messed up the mental health field in California. California used to be the primo state for mental health services until Reagan and Bush got into office. Also, that's when homelessness began to be more of a problem, was when Reagan and Bush got into office and jacked up the economy. Then you started hearing more and more about people being homeless and jobless. And that continued on into the 90s and into the new millennium, where it's just gotten worse and worse. But that was because Reagan had jacked up the mental health field. They also brought in the advent of the HMO, which actually messed up the whole medical field and the dental field. My father was a dentist. I used to work for him. And most of his patients were Denti-Cal. And when Reagan and Bush got into office, they started cutting the fees for dental services, medical services through this HMO thing, which actually just gives patients watered down services and doesn't pay the doctors enough. The other issue now is that there's a problem with employment, especially for Black Americans. A lot of them that are homeless are there because they can't get a good job. And if you look at who's working out here, you see it's a bunch of foreigners. Everything in Los Angeles County is a Mexican just about. The Jack in the Box, the McDonald's, you go to the hospitals, most of the nurses are Hispanic or Filipino or something like that. I am a teacher in LA Unified. I was a teacher in LA Unified. I can't get a job now. I was a computer teacher. And they just about wiped out all the computer courses because everything is now just about English as a second language. This is an adult education. That was my specialty.
That's what LAUSD has pretty much become, and it's at this point by design. That's the clientele.
Yes, all the schools. If you watch the news, all the schools when they feature a high school, like a high school marching band or something, they're all Hispanic. Maybe have one Black person in there, and they don't comment nothing about that. Black Americans are being wiped out of Los Angeles County.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much for the call, Ernest. Appreciate it. A lot to cover over there. Let's go to Dale in Long Beach. Dale, hello. Dale can call back. Let's go to Adam in Santa Rosa. Adam, hello.
Hello, Randy. How's it going, man?
Doing great.
Well, thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it.
What you got for us?
So basically, concerning the housing crisis thing you're mentioning, I don't think of it as a housing crisis at all. I mean, we have so much land that's open in California. The state you always see all these different properties that say, pending development or just not being used. So we could build on land if we wanted to, but realistically, it's also more about congregation, and that goes across the entire United States. People don't want to spread out from each other, right? They want to form like mega cities like in Judge Dredd, as opposed to moving out into the woods and having to travel an hour to get to town, So it's not so much housing. It's more about people just literally moving away from each other. The state could sell more land if they wanted to, allow people to buy more land and actually develop on it, but it's just people don't have the desire to do so, a lot of individuals. The people who want to live in LA want to live in LA. The people who want to live in San Francisco want to move there. Any person who has an inclination to live in a major city is going to move there. People need to be encouraged to spread out, to move away from each other, to enjoy like a farming kind of lifestyle. And the other caller who mentioned about like Hispanics and whatnot working, well, the difference between Mexicans and a lot of other people is that for them, a lot of them are Christian or majority Catholic. And so a good life is literally just having a job and taking care of your kids. You know, you don't hear about a high suicide rate amongst Mexicans. It's primarily white people.
That's an interesting point.
The housing market crash. It's more of just people spreading out and, you know, trying to take care of their families and just being good human beings. It would solve a lot of problems.
Well, and you look at over the last few years, this is something we discovered during COVID. There are a whole lot of jobs that can be done in a whole lot of different places thanks to remote work, which means we could spread people out. But that means that cities like LA are going to lose tax base, and they don't like that. And that's why they don't advocate for those, even though if you took 20% of the population and put them remote, well, you'd have no traffic on the freeways.
And there's also the whole point of, I've always told people to say, oh, if certain people left the country, went different other places, you know, people don't want to do certain jobs. It's like, you don't have a choice. If the jobs are there and they need to be done, there's not other people to do it, people will fill those jobs. So citizens of this country will definitely take the jobs because they'll have to. When you don't give people a choice, you don't have a choice. So when you're forced to be productive, you will be.
I think that's a really good point, Adam.
If you move,
keep going.
Thanks, Andy. So when you move away from each other, that's what would happen, you know, homesteading, more of that kind of thing, to where humans were, you know, could be around each other easier when they did go to meet each other, or when they formed little tiny communities that everybody could take care of each other and everybody had a purpose to serve, as opposed to where each of us goes on our phone, does their doom scrolling, spends their day worrying about everything, when it really could be so much more simple if we chose to have it be that way. But we're creatures of habit, so we choose to be amongst each other. We choose to have Taco Bell because it's easy and it's good, delicious garbage food. But we could spread up if we wanted to, and we could have a healthier lifestyle, a happier lifestyle. But again, you know, we're creatures of habit, and people don't really choose to. Just like the other individual mentioning about these drug addicts who don't want to get better. I literally met an individual who said that I mentioned the YMCA to him, and he sleeps in a porta-john at night, though. He said he was too proud to stay at a YMCA, which made absolutely no sense to me. And there was also young homeless people who I've spoken to because I worked at a gas station for a little bit, who were begging for money, and they said that literally and they came out here because they figured they'd make more in New York, and in New York, they said you could just sit on the sidewalk and fall asleep, and you'd wake up with like $300 strewn on your lap. That blew my mind.
That is wild. Yeah, the amount of money that our type of all that, plus the panhandling, plus the benefits and everything else, there's like a certain threshold where you make way more money doing nothing than if you're trying to get into the workforce.
And I know everybody has seen this, and probably even yourself, because it'd be hard to miss, when you watch people who panhandle outside of Safeways, and it's almost universally, at least in my experience here in California, almost universally people from India, not Nepal, because they work with many Nepalese people. So various people from India or somewhere in that region, but they're begging for the money. They have their kids with them, and so clearly they're not starving. And I've literally watched them get into a Mercedes and drive away when they were done at that place, at that Safeway.
Oh, there's a lot of that going on. Yeah, no, there's plenty of that. The lack of integrity,
the lack of ethics, of morals and values, other things like morals, values, ethics, things that could also be built up if you had nuclear families living together, growing up like I did on a 10-acre ranch where it was, you know, a French mother, an Irish Catholic father, who was yes sir, no sir, please, thank you. And you grew up as a good human being, understanding the value of hard work, of morals, of values, of ethics. And why California is a place that technically, that really truly could still be saved. It is still a beautiful state. We have more national parks than anywhere else. It's absolutely gorgeous here. And the reason why it costs so much in California is not just all the business that's done here or the other person saying, Jack, done up the economy. We want a strong economy. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's the topography. It's everything that we have to offer in California is the reason why things truly cost so much, because everything's readily available for us. If people want to leave, they could leave. No one really wants to, especially Republicans. We don't want to have to leave here. We shouldn't have to leave here. We love this state. The state is beautiful. We know what is right for it. It's just we haven't really been allowed to have a voice.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do for you every single day, Adam. We're out of time. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. People are fired up today. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Gary in L.A. Gary, hello.
Hello there. Yeah, my opinion is that we don't have a vacant. We have a lot of vacancies. We don't have to build more homes. I think that the people should have that the church be in charge and do all the service, because a lot of the sicknesses in the church, some doctors, they don't know how to deal with the problem. And I think doctors make people sick more than people get sick. And we not say the church, because if a person has a devil in him, no medication can heal him. Only the church could heal him. That's
Well, and
my
what we have
opinion.
seen, Gary, is the faith-based organizations like the Union Rescue Mission have a way higher success rate of not just getting people off the street, but turning their lives around and becoming a functional member of society. In the Bay Area, Salvation Army is doing that every single day. 800-222-5222. Let's go to George in Diamond Bar. George, hello. George.
Hello. Hey, how you doing? Just really quick, what I was going to say is that in California, the problem is that people sometimes misunderstand. We don't have a problem of housing. We have a problem that homeless people cannot afford housing. I mean, you drive all through Southern California, you see all the houses that are being built, all the houses that are up and newly built, and they're ready for people to move in. So if housing was just the issue to solve the homeless problem here in California, well, the solution is right in front of us.
Well, yeah, because we've got the places. There's vacancies every single day. Interesting point that a friend made to me. When the fires took place in January and tens of thousands of people lost their homes overnight, they didn't end up on the streets. They found a place to go.
Absolutely. You're right. That is true. So that's, I think, the misconception that's going on in California, and that, or maybe throughout the country. But they're saying, hey, we don't have enough. We have more than enough. It's just whether it's affordable or not, that's a different story. They can afford it. And then as a building owner, am I going to turn over a building unsupervised, and then how trash is it going to be? Is there certain things in place? And how am I going to get compensated? I have a mortgage. Those are all things that need to be looked at. And if we look at all those, then yes, we can find housing for everybody.
I think you make a really good
point. Put them in some type of program and then put them back, so that they can be a functioning person of society. But it takes us all as a whole to actually do that, opposed to just a few individual parties.
I think you make a good point. Thanks so much for the call, George. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. More of your calls coming up next. Do you truly believe California is in a housing crisis? By the way, there are currently 145,000 vacant rental units in the state of California. I think the amount of homeless people is somewhere around 180,000. So we're almost there. I don't know if we could build our way out of this. It's the John Phillips Show. Let's go to Ken in Studio City. Ken, hello.
Hi, Randy. How are you? I'm sorry for asking that. Thanks for taking my call. Everybody asks you that. I think it would be helpful to clarify why we don't have a network of mental hospitals in this state anymore, because at one time we had a very good, effective network. Over a period of about 15 years, the medical community, the psychiatric part of the medical community, was very, very liberal and decided that the best way of treating most mentally ill people, the mentally ill people who were not violent, was to reintroduce them into society. So they emphasized very strongly, they encouraged the legislature in California to pass some bills to close up shop and open small community-based housing and treatment centers for mentally ill to reintroduce them. So the most violent were kept in the mental hospitals, but these large mental hospitals, it was too efficient to keep a small population. It was too expensive and too efficient. So the mental hospitals all went away. Now, I've heard at least twice callers blaming Reagan, Governor Reagan, for this. And it really, yes, he signed a couple of bills in 1967. This goes way back. And in fact, it goes way back before he really became the conservative that he was when he was president. He went along, he didn't, as the governor doesn't write legislation. He signs into law bills. The legislature wrote this legislation, and he, with good intention, went along with what the psychiatric community was suggesting and encouraging. And he signed these into law in 1967. And so was it his fault? Well, he was part of it, but he was a small part of it. It was really the legislature who has, back then, who drastically remade for the worse our mental hospital, our mental treatment landscape that we have today. And once you the $20 billion of homeless and mental health money that has been squandered over the past, 5 years, we could have easily with that money built mental health treatment hospitals. But of course, as you know, that money goes to the homeless industrial complex, and it's a black hole. It goes into salaries, and it goes back into campaign contributions for the very politicians that support the complex. But we could have rebuilt the mental health, the mental hospital network that we had back in that started to be dismantled in the early 60s.
Oh, no, you're totally right about that, and we totally could, but the will is not there. And the grift that happened when we took the mental hospitals out of the state, kicked it down to the counties, then we never built anything, and people went out into the community, it's the same thing that's going on with the decarceration crowd, where they want to empty out the prisons, empty out the jails, and what? Well, that money that you were spending on that, give it to my nonprofit. We'll put them in a community-based organization. Let's go to Richard in Lake County. Richard, hello.
Yes, good afternoon. My comments are regarding the Presidio in San Francisco. They've got all kinds of buildings in there, 2- and 3-story buildings, just sitting there doing nothing. I don't know why they can't turn that into a homeless shelter for these people. And it just seems like a vacant housing right there. And it would be perfect. And then on the other thing I want to mention is the CVR tax that we pay for our recyclable bottles when we purchase them in the store.
Oh, yeah.
Where's all that money going?
Oh, good question. I don't think anybody knows. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. All right, Aurelio in Huntington Beach, you got 30 seconds. Go.
Yeah, my family came from Cuba. I'm Hispanic, and they did it before Castro. And all these guys coming over doing illegal things only make us look bad. Nancy Pelosi and her nephew Gavin Newsom, they've even said they need people to come up and pick their grapes. You talk about racist. That's racist.
They have said that. That is true. Thank you so much for the call. We got one more hour to go. We're talking the Bay Area transit tax next. It's the John Phillips Show.